Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. Today is the 20th of October 2023 and we are looking at a series of issues that pertain the rights and freedoms of the citizens of this country. Being the Citizens Chat Show, we have a panel of distinguished citizens of this country and they are up to discuss some of the issues that affect the citizens of Uganda. I'm going to introduce them and we'll give them an opportunity to greet you, our viewer, and later we unpack what we have for you today. I'll begin from my immediate left, Mr. Joseph Ochieno. First of all, congratulations. You must be in jubilant mode.
No, I'm not jubilant, but I'm relieved if this is a matter for the Supreme Court ruling that Kenya is in fact not UPC leader. So basically the Supreme Court is saying Kenya has been parading 6th floor of Uganda House since 2016, as an illegality. And so that sadly means that unfortunately the party has been having major issues. But it's a relief that, soon with the pending judicial review, we should be able to have a clearly mandated president of the party so that we're able to take on this NRA regime on their terrible track record on human rights.
As an interested party, as all the events unfold, what are your short-term, plans as you see Akena out and some other people coming?
That's important. It would really be to try and bring harmony in the party, to bring the different strands of the party, particularly, Akena and Akena supporters who are still party members. The other side, which was basically the Olara side of the party, are still party members. Olara left Joseph Bosa. Joseph Bosa left Peter Olobiri. Those people have people who are loyal to them personally, but collectively. But most importantly, and beyond that, it is the case that I, having won the elections for the party leadership, I want to believe that, I am able to bring together both sides of the strands of the party and then focus very urgently in the business of recruiting, reorganizing the party, remainstreaming the party, rebuilding relationships, particularly with our symbiotic relative, that's the Milton Obote Foundation, and then take the party back to the national table and have a conversation and form a relationship with the other opposition political parties and indeed all political leaders in this country, including my good friends from NRM, so that we together we're able to have a clearer view on where this country ought to be going for younger people like yourselves, what their programs are, what our programs are, and how particularly we're able to address the post-Museveni Uganda, which must happen.
Thank you so much. I like the fact that you still refer to Dr. Obote and his legacy at the party. The other guest on the show is retired Major Awich Pollar, Director, External Affairs of the National Resistance Movement. Major, you're most welcome to the show.
Thank you, and greetings to our viewers. Also greetings from NRM, the mighty party. There's no news from the party, apart from the Uganda news that we shall discuss. And
maybe you could talk to us about your view from the UPC judgment.
Yes, but I was still saying that there's no news from NRM, and no news is good news. Don't ever crave for news, because the chances are that bad news travel faster than good news. So if you hear nothing is in NRM, there's peace, then no news is good news. So there's no news. But to our Congress friends, well, we have always told them that NRM government has put in the infrastructural provisions for justice. And one way is by having courts of the laws and the courts of law. And there it is. They were aggrieved. They went to court. I'm only sorry that it takes so long. And there's a problem with the judicial system here because courts are clogged by cases and cases. Lately, a lot have been done to put in more judges at all levels, High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court. So how I wish that they had got that justice maybe a little earlier. But still, you should appreciate NRM. That is justice. You have where to arbitrate. You have an arbiter, which is the court. You have where you take your grievances, and courts adjudicate.
NRA court, you see?
No, a judicial system established by the government of NRM.
Oh, gosh.
Is the NRM ready for the challenger coming out of UPC? It could be Mr. Ochieno, it could be someone.
Oh yeah, we're ready because we really want a vibrant democracy. I have said again and again that an opposition party or an opposition leader is a leader in waiting. An opposition party is an alternative government in waiting. Like in UK, for example, if you're a leader of opposition, you are a prime minister in waiting, meaning that should people choose you, you come. So if you are a Labour Party, for example, you're in the opposition, the ideal situation is that you're a party in opposition, but you're a party in government in waiting. So we really want a vibrant democracy, and the vibrant democracy can only be through a competitive system where people will choose. So if they have a competent leader like my good friend here, we shall be happy to have him. And we talk to the masses. He will have his manifesto to market. We shall have our manifesto to market. And the people will decide.
Key to not a competent man like Honorable Joseph Ochieno from an NRM leader. Hopefully you give you up to the task.
It's very generous, yes.
Today we are discussing the continuing human rights violations in the country, but also later in the show shall delve into the murder of tourists, unfortunate incident in Queen Elizabeth National Park. But we talk human rights, and this is the Citizens Chat Show. Over time, we've had reports from the Uganda Human Rights Commission. We've had reports from international organs like Amnesty International, or even police itself locally here in the country, and they say the violation of the rights of Ugandans is on the rise day by day. You have a report from the Uganda Human Rights Commission which says security organs, the police, the army, ISO, CMI, SFC, to mention, they are the key perpetrators of this vice in this country. And they cite incidences of unlawful arrests, detention without trial, talk about disappearance of individuals from this country and no one is able to account for them. Mention the killings, mention all sorts of activity that is unlawful by security organs. And I want to start with you, Major, where you sit at the NRM. Is this the best the NRM can offer to this country?
This is a wide topic, but briefly to your answer, this is not the best. If I was to be brief to your question, why I'm saying it's a wide topic is that we should know that we are dealing with a living society, not a dead society. So a living society in this case is a society of Ugandans of 45 million people. And therefore, it is not hard and frozen, it is not static. So in the day-to-day life, there are bound to be lots of contradiction, and that is expected. Now, in the area of human rights, what should matter is what are the safeguards in place to resolve it. I could dare mention that it is true that human rights is assessed. At the national level, we have given the assessment to Human Rights Commission to come with an annual report, the assessment of what is happening. At international level, there is an assessment through treaties where a government reports to United Nations. There's a periodic period to report, and UN assesses how far you are complying. Incidentally, I've been on that body. is a highly coveted body, elected by 193 countries in the world, General Assembly. I've won that election twice, and they elect only 9 human beings have been on that team. So we assess the world. So even if you take, for example, a country like Sweden, you will see that human rights violations still exist. Now, how do I know it? For example, in Sweden, we have a procedure in Geneva where before Sweden appears before us, because it's like a court, you listen to civil society. They present what is called alternative report. Sometimes they call it shadow report. So that when government is submitting their report, we already have another report from an independent body. But I can assure you, the NGO in Sweden will tell you lots and lots of violations and omissions. So what am I trying to mean here? What I'm trying to mean here is that in a society, it is going to be very difficult to have a society where there's no violations. In fact, in Geneva, again, if I go back, we even used to say, if Uganda comes, we make them jump at a lower level. When Sweden comes, we put the bar up, because we said you have all it takes to protect human rights. You have the money, you have the development, you have the technology, you have the training of the state officials, you even pay them well. So if Uganda assessment come and they jump this bar, when Sweden comes, we even put it up. But you still see. So violations are there. And to this effect, government has put remedies. For example, to the state. Before, it used to be that if a police person went to arrest a person and breaks the testacle, you would sue Attorney General for this police officer breaking testacle. The law, we modified it to say, no way, you're going to be personally liable for your violations. You are going to be on duty, you violate the rights, the law will catch up with you directly. You are now not going to hide under defense of Attorney General. Of course, you have put entrench a provision in the case of disappearance, a provision like habeas corpus. Habeas corpus is one of the 4 rights that cannot be derogated from. The other 3 being freedom from slavery, freedom from torture, and what? Slavery, torture, and a fair hearing. 4 rights that under no circumstance you should not derogate. It doesn't even include right to life, because right to life, you can be taken to court charged of murder and the court will order that you be executed. So your right to life will be removed. So a habeas corpus is particularly entrenched there to say, like the case of disappearance, if Ochieno is arrested by CMI and is not seen, you go to court and say, from the word corpse, body, bring the body to this court. And the state will have no option than to bring the body. So what I'm saying here is that violations will continue to appear, even in Sweden. What should matter us now is, do we have provisions in the institutional framework, in terms of the law, in terms of bodies like human rights itself, in terms of courts of law, in terms of investigation to see where there's violation that is there. But to imagine that Uganda will reach a position where there's peace and harmony, that will only be in utopia. Let me say utopia. Utopia is a situation where you dream for. It was written by Owen, some man called Owen, during Industrial Revolution in Europe. People were suffering. So because of suffering, Owen wrote a book, a novel, that in some island in the water, they were peaceful, everybody would eat together, everybody. So it's called utopian. So to expect non-violations, it's utopian. What is important, however, is now that you know there's going to be violations, what measures, what safeguard have you put in place as government to address it as and when such violations occur?
Major, maybe if I can engage on that one. You mentioned habeas corpus, and the couple of organs in place, police and human rights commission. But over time, we've seen people disappearing. And case in point, the NUP opposition party has for long been claiming some of its members, and it has a list of members that have disappeared. They have gone to court. Court has put out orders for habeas corpus, and state says we do not have these people. How do you respond to that?
Yes, indeed, they find when they don't have. You see, what happens in the case of NUP is that sometimes they make an allegation, and yet the law says he who alleges has the burden to prove. They make the allegation and they want you, the accused, to prove, in this case, the state. If that is how it works, suppose they went with at least a claim of 10,000 people disappearing. And then you are the one to tell me to prove where they are?
Is it not your role as a state?
No. It is you to prove that Ochieno John was arrested on this and this. They have not corroborated that. It needs a lot. For example, you need to allege the person, check with in NERA, prove that that person was registered in NERA, go to the village. But what has happened in this case is to just lump a list in parliament. Then the Minister of Internal Affairs, JJ. It becomes difficult. It becomes now a case of me just alleging and you prove.
Thank you. Let me engage the Honorable Joseph on that very issue. Major says the government has put in place institutions to make sure human rights are not violated in this country. In case they are violated, there is a follow-up and there is justice. What do you make of that?
It's actually extraordinary what my good friend here is seeming to suggest. First, the common sense aspect of the law that the burden of responsibility, burden of proof, lies with those making accusations. But to suggest, therefore, that Ugandans do not have an account or a series of accounts documented of human rights abuses since January 1986 is neither here nor there. But of course, that is what Comrade Awich is saying. But also to suggest that because we simply have mechanisms in place. We always argued that this country has very good laws, generally, not the best, but the issue is implementations. Reports of abductions are not, and the many, reports of abductions, particularly in the last 4 years, is nothing new. If anything, for me, I got very concerned from about the year 2018 or thereabout that we're seeing abductions under NRA, something that we thought was going to end with Idi Amin. It is extraordinary that 2017-18, 16, in fact, we saw these jumping on in public, going to desecrate the course of law by NRA. I don't know how many of those people were prosecuted, how many of those guys lost their jobs, and how many of those commanders, who led and gave directives for these guys to do these things have been held to account. While it is actually interestingly the case that it's nice that now you can, a police officer who slaps basically can and should take direct responsibility. I am not a practicing lawyer, but I wonder, how does this police officer find him or herself in Kisangati, who sent him there? Some commander from a particular corner in Chira Road did. Some commander with a command in Chira Road, sent them somebody from CPS, or some phone call came from State House or from the Chieftaincy of Military or Intelligence and gave these guys directives. So to suggest that that is therefore okay and it's confined down there, and Mr. Museveni wants to stay safe and basically just enjoy our suits and milk in State House is extraordinarily unacceptable. I look back and when the subjects come up and get myself very disappointed that documented accounts of human rights abuses in this country, and it's not for this program now, but we can have a conversation on that, are far more, with evidence than under Idi Amin. For somebody like Museveni, who went to the bush seeking allegedly to put an end to human rights abuses. And when I look at Mr. Museveni's clips, particularly around the time when he was still first coming from the bush, those days when he was still playing dilly-dallying, not dilly-dallying, but dallying with the BBCs and others and Channel 4s of this world, you know, the guy would talk about, Obote killed people, Obote did this, Obote, by the actual, as a matter of interest, Obote suffered with Museveni. So Obote is now a very happy man actually in heaven, because none of the things that Museveni was saying, but most of the things that is being said about Mr. Museveni are true. To the extent that even within the last week, some of the legislators' protests are related to how some of their colleagues are treated, meaning legislators. It's good. Comrade Rich is talking about Britain and British Parliament, around which I was, and I am very familiar. You know, a member of Parliament, for a member of Parliament's shirt to be touched, for a member of Parliament to be arrested, for a member of Parliament to be detained, you know, is extraordinarily unheard of unless these are pedophiles or some of these big money thieves, whatever. But even then, they're actually usually summoned. They're asked to report to police and then they're detained from there. But to see leaders of opposition, including former leaders of opposition in Parliament, being bundled, to see a parliamentary committee member being treated like they treated Senyonyi, to see how I think Martin Spoog and many of these people were treated, but particularly to see the manner in which NRA kidnapped the official leader of opposition, in the name of young Robert Chagulanyi, from an aircraft on the car park of Entebbe International Airport. I never knew I would ever see that again. But this is something within the last few weeks. And to that is extraordinary, and I think it's shameful. I don't know how NRA can explain how they've treated Robert Chagulanyi. Quickly, just on this. Paul Semogerere, as leader of opposition, was known to be collaborating with our good friends in NRA in the bush. And in fact, they went ahead and boasted, that, they should hand over government to them. So it was actually known they're actively involved with the rebels. But there's no time, in the Obote II government, for instance, when Semogerere was official leader of opposition, where you could even say that perhaps police even went to have a major serious conversation with him, even at his home, let alone in his office. So to see what's happening under NRA is a shock.
You see, thank you for that insight. I want to take you back to the NUP incident. If you are in power and the UPC, perhaps the Obote government then, and you have...
Obote is gone, but gave us a fantastic record. But so a future UPC, possibly under my administration, yes.
My point is you're having a leader of opposition coming back into the country and they organize a 5 million walk. Say 1 million. People collect near the State House, near the international airport. Would the UPC government allow that?
That's a very important point, but amazing that you're asking me that if it is in response to my question of the extraordinary abuse of the very basic rights and freedoms of any Ugandan individual. By the way, even the manner of arrest, where a police officer comes to me, to anybody else, or to our askari down the gate, you don't have to pick somebody and bundle them and think that you give them extra legs to walk in. What kind of arrest in that? And you see very clearly. I mean, like if you see the Senyonyi clip, there is no evidence that Senyonyi was saying, "I'm not moving." Simply get somebody and say, "Look, let's take a walk." And so that's a very important point. So the manner in which it's done alone, is almost as if somebody is fully equipped and armed. Number 3, you find, and by the way, this is taxpayers' money. This is taxpayers. That's your money, by the way. Museveni doesn't own this money because Museveni was very broke, by the way. As your age, Museveni was very broke, I want to tell you that. Very broke, but all the money that Museveni has is our money. But anyway, so to do that with the security services, armed, angry men, possibly 40, and against one person who's unarmed, someone like Ochieno, who's even never slapped, even never boxed since I was, So you do that, it's actually wrong. But then to suggest that you're doing that in this case, you're rolling these guys and trying to show us how you do kung fu and things like that. And by this time, this is just a dramatic act. No, I'm answering you. It's extraordinary. But to suggest that you're doing that because Robert Chagulanyi has said that he was going to do a march and a demonstration. My good brother here is a lawyer. You know, do you know in democracies, one fellow citizens, particularly you young VO Ugandans, amongst the most basic fundamental rights of the individual citizen is the right to freely express, freedom of association, freedom of freedom to protest, you know, and to picket are basic rights. Strangely enough, under NRA, they are not allowed, except if it is something to go and clap for young Mr. Muhozi. You know? So please don't mix it. Number three, if particularly a political leader is saying that I am gathering 5 million people, 1 million people, it's actually very interesting for you journalists. Your job is to be very anxious. Is he really going to raise 1 million people? And say, wow, they managed to mobilize 1 million people. Because that is the voice of the people. And in many cases, even governing political parties, including in Britain, by the way, in some of the, if you watch television in the last 1 week, you know, when it comes to the question of the British authorities, you know, supporting some of the terror taking place in the Middle East, you know, the number of people who come to the streets, those are the demonstrations of strength of opinion as an alternative to people throwing stones, and as an alternative, you know, to the terror that Museveni subjected the people of Luweero. You know, so that is, so if you don't do that, what else do people do? So people go out there to vent, people go out there to express, and most importantly, I want to repeat, the more people you find at City Square, and more Kampala City, you know, and the 1 million. Do you know what government, the UPC government, do since you asked me? I would come from a state house in Entebbe and say, fellow citizens, you have spoken, we have heard you. You have spoken, we have heard you. That's what a UPC president, Ochieno, would do, and that's what Milton Obote would do. You know, we have heard you, we are reviewing our position, you know, whether it's a question of taxation, we've heard your position, whether you're protesting Uganda's presence in Somalia, whether our boys and girls are continuing to die and come back in body bags, because that's the free will of expression away from elections. And in fact, you can have 5 million Ugandans coming to the streets of Kampala and saying, no, Mr. Museveni resigned today. So even if it is the case that constitutionally the guy's mandate is yet to expire, maybe in two and a half years, 2 years' time, they say that no, we had public opinion. And the legal minds like him begin to say, what do we do under these circumstances? Maybe the president simply resigned because I've lost confidence in people. But not because you've lost confidence, you're letting go. That is what happens in democracy, and that's what's happened in civility, and that is what does not exist in this country. And I repeat, there is no way in which, simply because Chagulanyi had said he was going to have 500 million, 1 million people. So what is the crime Chagulanyi commits? Getting 5 million people, 1 million people to come and clap for him and support him. Final point, the security context, because people don't normally tend to raise this. People tend to raise this to say that, oh, it's going to disrupt business. No, it's a democratic right. Businesses ought to know that. I campaigned and by the way, we walked from Makerere University to Kampala over apartheid. We walked from Makerere University to Kampala and sat actually by Uganda House there for a very long time, you know, over the death of the Boer death of Samora Machel. Boers, these Boers who killed Samora Machel. You know, we walked from Kampala to City Square over the American bombardment of Benghazi, you know, in 1986. I think it was around same time actually, with Ronald Reagan, and I think it's believed that what's his name, Gaddafi's child died. Now, interestingly, in 1986, Gaddafi was still a very unpopular person in Uganda because, you know what, Gaddafi supported Idi Amin and Idi Amin's terror in this country. But even for me, UPC, whom Gaddafi used his guns and arms and backed Amin to push, you know, we still come from Makerere University said, as a matter of principle, as students, we are demonstrating our opposition to the US, you know, invasion, and we are demonstrating our support, you know, for the innocent in Libya. That is what demonstration do. In fact, as a way forward to conclude, the most urgent basic right, the most urgent basic right that the youth of this country need, urgently, is an opening up of a space for a possibility that people should demonstrate, people should hold pickets without let or hindrance, and actually should do so without necessarily getting quote authority. They merely inform the police rather than getting authority.
Thank you so much for that insight. Major, perhaps you would want to respond to some of the points made by Honorable, but also 5 million people were gathering in Entebbe and you didn't allow them gather. Is the NRM afraid of people gathering, more so those that do not agree with them?
Okay, I will answer that, but I'd like to respond to what he's saying. You see, many people have lauded the picking of the new president from the airport, and they said it's a violation of rights. How I wish they would say which right, because nearly all rights is codified. Codified means you can cite an article or a section. Now, so which right was violated by him being picked?
The right to free movement, the right to association.
At that time, he wanted to associate.
Yes,
he wanted to move
with the people that came to receive him at the airport.
Yeah.
Anyway, if it is a right to free movement and association, the state restrained that and then took him home. So if he wanted to freely move, it is unfortunate he freely didn't move and he freely didn't associate. He went home.
He didn't go home. He was forcefully taken to his home.
But the thing is, this brings me to what you said. Even if you put at 1 million, by the way, from good authority, the idea of picking the leader of the opposition was in consonance with the agreement of the top leadership of the opposition themselves. The top leadership of the opposition argued that, you see, in our endeavors, we already have our youth facing courts of law. Now, if we carry out this operation, so to say, we risk having more. So why don't we stay away from this so that we don't risk this? And many of them argued that if you have a 1 million movement, even the leaders themselves of NUP will fail to command them to be peaceful. Remember that even in the 1 million, there are thugs who will enter, who may not be NUP, but will enter with their own interest. So the NUP leaders themselves said they may fail to control. And if they fail to control and a conflict arose with the state, they were sure that life would be lost. Because if 20 or 10 come to disarm a security officer on duty, that security officer may fear that these people have actually come to kill me, and there would be confusion. So what happened was to avoid that. Now, from this position of the state is that it is difficult to control a crowd of 1 million. Ideally, if you organize, like Makerere University, if you organize a demonstration from Makerere, as is saying, the police should guard you and let you express freely. But to guard 1 million is not easy. Suppose they had decided to become unlawful and branch in State House. How would you control 1 million people?
Why do we expect the worst?
Why don't we? So, therefore, the law provides for expression, but the law anticipates that the size, the timing, and the area where this activity will take place should be manageable by the state so that it is done lawfully. Now, if the state sees that the timing, the space, and the manner will not be managed, then he has no option than to stay it, to let it not happen.
Maybe an alternative one. On Independence Day, we had still NUP prayers at their party headquarters, and police and the army came in, arrested by the famously known drones, some leaders of the NUP, and they were taken out. Was that population still not manageable?
That one I have no facts, and therefore I can't comment. I need to comment from a very informed position. That one I have no facts. But I want to say also that my colleague, my good Congress friend here says freedom of association is non-existence. Freedom of association has been interpreted to mean, for example, freedom to have political parties. Not only association as farmers or as church goers, but I think the freedom of association, which is most emphasized in political terms, is freedom to have political parties. He is the head of a political party. It shouldn't be him to turn around to say there's no freedom of association. Okay? Unless he's saying an association of disco dancers, which they also have. But in political terms, freedom of association has been interpreted to mean freedom to form political parties, and you market your manifesto for people to vote for you. He has a legitimate Congress party. Isn't that freedom of association?
And the party organized prayers, and they were not allowed to pray. The party organized
that one I've already answered.
An event. To
that one I've already answered.
Leader.
That in this particular event, I have no facts, and I'm not going to go there. But the fact remains that freedom of association is interpreted to mean freedom of political association, which is there. Now, he asked what UPC would do. I'm sure if he asked me that, what UPC would do would be
Please share with us.
Was to shoot. What else? You see, time has gone so far that we don't seem to point at history. Did you know that at one time during UPC, cabinet ministers were arrested in parliament? Bala Kikiria.
That's true.
They just came to parliament. Toa huyu. You know, in Swahili, kamata huyu, kamata. And moreover, these are the front benchers.
And he will argue that we had members of parliament arrested in this government in parliament.
So, what I'm saying is that those things happen because for him, it seems to present an ideal situation that if it was UPC, you'd come and address the 5 million and they say you resign and you resign.
Yes.
Or you... No,
but you see, Major, you seem to suggest that because wrongs have happened in the past, if they happen today, then we should associate with them and say...
I totally agree that two wrongs don't make a right. But I'm saying it's not correct to come and portray an image which you know you have actually violated it. Okay? You have not. Now, if you say that any other demand should be met by, say, resignation. Resignation is a freedom of one person. Even the Pope can resign now. And I think the other Pope before this one,
Pope Benedict,
did. That is of your free will. But in a situation where we have many political interest manifesting itself, private interest clothing itself into a political claim, if you were to have a government resign every day, you'd possibly have every month a new government. So what you do, stick to your mandate, stick to the law. Put issues in place like, if we have election and you disagree that I didn't win, go to Supreme Court.
Not to the
If you think I've exceeded my mandate, go to court. If we don't and have the other option, then we shall be having government resign every day. But as I said, resignation is an individual choice. Even the Pope can do it. We don't seem to think like that. And our party leader has not shown us he's doing that.
What can summon resignation to the NRM?
What?
What can summon resignation to the NRM?
Resignation to NRM or to the leader of NRM?
You've failed to manage the human rights situation.
No. What can summon a resignation in NRM could be actually what is clearly provided for in the Constitution. By the way, the Constitution provides for vacation of office of a president, ill health, and the procedures of proving this and that. The provisions under which an NRM leader like Museveni can leave or vacate the office of the presidency is clearly spelled out in the constitution. And it does not include any demand of anybody. Please stay, go, because people are, a group of people have demanded. But the vacation of an office of a president is clearly spelled out in the constitution. That this you can leave, this you can leave, this you can leave, this you can leave, including if you so wish. For example, if you a president and you feel you get your ill health or any other reason, you said, I will leave. So that is it. Now, it is not correct for our colleague in the Congress to think whoever wishes, even him, if he became president tomorrow, people will demand he should resign. Will you? Then how many governments will you have? Many ways, circumstances. Yes, circumstances are spelled out in the constitution. Circumstances are spelled out in other forums, but not any ad hoc position. So the issue of the march should be treated as such. Any demonstration, even students from Makere to come, the state should know that it is the size and the timing and where they are passing and they are managed, and it ends peacefully. If the state feels this group coming from Makere cannot conform to a proper management of their expression, then they say stay in Makere.
Thank you. Honorable Joseph, maybe to begin from a point of defending your UPC, he says, had the UPC been faced with a similar circumstance, you would actually just shoot the citizens. But also, there's always a claim by especially police that opposition...
Sorry, compare shooting with picking the leader and taking him to his home.
You know, the word picking is also as interesting. But also, I want to ask, police usually says opposition leaders are not cooperative. You summon them, they do not show up. You talk to them, they do not listen. Is that true of you?
No evidence to that effect. But I must say that there's actually breaking news this Friday that Comrade Awich seems to suggest that, in fact, it is not only about their bad human rights record, basically as demonstrated in Entebbe, but rather that they are persuaded, and this is very, very extraordinary, persuaded by leaders in NUP who begged them that, look, please do us a favor. Don't allow this because we will not be able to contain it. Did you note that? It was a very, very, very important claim. And if that's true, then it's very interesting. It's a point that our friends in NUP really, really ought to clarify. That they went and told the NRA guys that, look, we don't think we can manage this 1 million because there's no guarantee that all of them will be our people. So I think that's a very important claim. But number two, and then I'll answer your question. Number two, no, it is absolutely the responsibility of the police, by the way, not the state, the responsibility of the police. Of course, police represent the state in that sense. The police are supposed to merely be informed, not permission sought, that we are going to demonstrate, or that we're going to picket. Yeah? And the police will, as Comrade Wicks rightly says, what is the anticipated number? What is the anticipated route? Roughly, possibly contextual cause. And in fact, police should even ask him, do you anticipate any problems? I actually talk as someone who's very experienced in this area. As I told you that I participated in 3 before NRA, and 3 before, and possibly an active leader in 2 of those ones as a student. But abroad, I became a perfect expert, on demonstrations, particularly in London and Birmingham, but mainly on the questions of apartheid Boers in Southern Africa, Ogoni in Nigeria, several times NRA's atrocities in northern Uganda and eastern Uganda, Kampala, and many other places. The genocide questions in Rwanda, the invasion of Rwanda by NRA and Kagame, then the question of the Congo. So I demonstrated. I did many of these things, both as a student leader and as a community leader in UK. Many a time it was merely about picking a phone and calling the police, and not even writing to them. And they would say, how many of you? One of the last demonstrations I was involved in was, we actually said we expect about 50 people. It was a symbolic thing in London. It was cold weather and 9th October, and we wanted to demonstrate, express our position on the absence of independence since NRA had still banned political parties, amongst many other things. And the police simply asked, how many, Joseph? How many people do you expect? At the time, I said about 50. Interestingly, about 30 people turned up. And because it was, it was going to be between about 11 and 12, 1 o'clock, and then we made our expressions. When we arrived, in fact, when I arrived, the two police officers there, and they said, oh, where are your people? Point is, it's the responsibility of the police. If 1 million people, and by that I advised, it's a pity Luke is not here for the police. One of my first formal visit to police headquarters, pay them a courtesy call, we're good friends, was to advise at the Inspector General's office, but not him at the time, that, you guys, community policing rather than the way you do things. But one of them is, if it's 1 million people coming, it's their job to mobilize resources to ensure that the safety and security of those people and others are protected. That is why we pay the police. Not many of them in funny goons, running around. Sometimes 20 of them, with the Minister of State, who's actually known, iron sheep thieves.
Like he states, do you think the NUP leadership was able to manage those 5 million people to make sure they stay on course?
No, actually, but that's very interesting. It would not be their jobs to manage. It's their job to advise their members. When their members get out of the law, it's the responsibility of the police. And in fact, it's an interesting point. In 1992, in the city of London, I was a deputy head for a demonstration, a picket or demonstration against Museveni and his then NRA team. And in that team was Paul Semogere. And Semogere, I think, was Minister for Internal Affairs still, just moved to Foreign Affairs. I think he had just become Minister for Foreign Affairs. So they'd come to beg for money that we are now still paying for. So at Centre Point in London, we were picketing. And the issue then was, it was my job to make sure that our people don't throw stones. It is our job to make sure that these people do not use, say, foul languages. Except that, and I told Paul Semogere later in 1996, when we now were friends and we met and I hosted him, that so once Semogere came, because I didn't expect him, he came very close to me. Of course, the guy is nice, petite, mild, but very, very decent guy. So he came and he was looking at me and he was smiling, because he was feeling quite embarrassed. I was furious. I said it will be in my memoirs. I felt like pick a stone, 10 little stone, whatever I could pick on the top, I can throw at him. I was full of fury and anger. But then I restrained myself very, very quickly, and that's what ended. So the moment's experience. So it's true that maybe sometimes people can get out of hand. Point is, I was head of the demonstration. So my responsibility to demonstrate leadership. In the then unlikely event that I did anything unlawful, the responsibility then lied with the police to pick me and deal with it. So when you get
cooperative with the police,
sorry.
Are you cooperative with the police?
Permanently cooperative. There's no evidence. And actually, if there is any opposition activists out there who want to freely express themselves, I would find it very, very sad that actually they operate outside the law. But where the police, in many cases, provoke people respond in many different ways. That's a different matter. But generally, police are there to be our friends and, as I said, law enforcers, and that's what they do. In fact, we should even go ahead and provide police with intelligence. Inclusive, that one there is a bit big-headed. We don't want him. We expect he's drunk. Pull him away, and they will do that. And that's one of the things that. And by the way, Pollar, talk nicely to Okoth Ochola, my good brother. I could go ahead and give them special talks and special training on how, civilly to manage many of things. It will be at a better fee than the consultancy fee that you sometimes give some very dubious people who end up eating this money. So no, it's the responsibility of the police. And the political point about this, Paula, if you allowed 1 million people to come and freely express themselves, and an unlikely event that there are 10 bad apples, and they present themselves badly, and you hold those people responsible and you deal with them, the political credit goes to you, as a government, and in this case, a security force. You managed the demonstration without
but if it fails, and you are talking about a nation in
no, if it fails,
that is cognizant of the Arab Spring and how things stand out.
What's wrong? What's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
The many leaders and how their leadership was affected.
Do you know? Actually, other guys tend to use those things to blackmail. They use Gaddafi and to blackmail Ugandans. Oh, if you change government, it will be like Libya. Who said no? There are better examples, not Arab Spring. There are better examples in Zambia. There are better examples in Botswana. There are better examples in Ghana. There are better examples in South Africa. Particularly South Africa. South Africa, actually, sometimes the opposition sometimes gets a bit really to the extreme. Sometimes that's laugh. The guy hadn't even shot at Comrade Ramaphosa, and is basically just like, no, that's the leadership. Back to the question of human rights and police abuse. Even if it was 5 billion, 5 million Ugandans have got a right to demonstrate. If at the end of the day the police didn't, they will say that we don't have capacity. And by the way, police can't refuse and say that maybe we've got a number of it. Some Saturdays we've got a number of football, Premier Leagues in London. Maybe there are 5 major Premier League stadia, unlike Uganda, where the number that UPC started is now cracking, and they can hardly add into anything. So the police can say they're stretched in terms of resources, so they can't hold for a major demonstration where there may be 200,000 people expected. That's the conversation. Then go ahead and Luke, who was supposed to be a Wesiga, go ahead and tell the people that, well, unfortunately, we are sorry we're not able to do that. You will get tick from Ochieno, and tick from most of the citizens.
I need to get Major to respond to that, but also as he responds, I want him to talk about, earlier in his conversation, he did say that it is very important with the basis of the individual culpability. He did say that it is important to not only take the person who commits the offense, but also the commanders, the line of commanders. Do you agree with him?
You see, I start with that. I think what he meant was, to my explanation to a law passed for individual liability of an officer who does something against the law in the execution of his duty. Like I gave the example of breaking a testicle. You see, if you take a criminal action against this officer, we all know criminal action is a personal liability. You can't say, I did this crime, no. Even a defense, you could raise a defense of a superior command. In this case of violations of human rights, a defense of a superior command doesn't. It is prohibited. That you raise in your defense that I had a superior command to break the testicle. No. 2, if you take a civil liability and you want this person to pay for damages, you would have your right to break the other one as a party, because civil liability is your right to choose who you want to sue. But for us, we are saying whoever is sued, don't go for the defense of Attorney General. If you feel and you have evidence, because remember, he who alleges has the burden to prove. If you think Kopolo Okwir, who broke the testicle, should be civilly sued with a command in CPS, it's your right as the petitioner or the applicant to bring the other person. That is a matter of procedure. But the baseline for me is, you will not have a defense, you the officer will not have a defense that I broke the testicle because I was doing Attorney General's work. Leave me alone. Go for Attorney General. No. Do I make it clear?
Do you think that is fair for the officers? You've been an armed officer, you know that orders usually come, and
No, it is
How do you handle
expected
pressure
that
from your
it is
seniors?
expected even during training that you should know what is lawful command. If you got a command from a superior commander to break a testicle, no, that is not lawful command. It is done during your training. You expect to be an officer of sound mind. You are supposed to exercise judgment. If you didn't know it in your training and you cannot exercise your judgment, then the law is saying be liable. So that is what I can respond to that. Now, I have what to raise about, I want to clarify, and I think maybe we could move forward to bigger human rights issues because we have really bogged down by the incidents, which I think the incidents of Entebbe was to illustrate violations. So if we get stuck by an example to us, we may not move far. But I want to go and clarify because he says it is a Good Friday because I said that the opinion of the NUP leadership was like that. I still say that the incident to preempt the 1 million march was in consonance with the views of other NUP leaders. For the reasons that I stated, that the NUP leaders were saying, look, we already have still our cadres battling court cases. Why would we now do this march? And we are not sure whether it is our good cadres who will demonstrate peacefully. Suppose wrong people join us and cause chaos. We still get into more problem? No. I want to say this, that if that 1 million march had happened, by now would be in another debate. For example, in self-defense and attack of security, we would now be saying when the party president of NUP, Honorable Siagulanyi, came back, 10 people were killed. That would now be the debate. Please, losing 10 lives or even 1 life is not good.
Why would they have been killed?
I'm saying if there was a scaffold, remember I'd already put a disclaimer that even among the NUP, they were not sure about wrong elements that would join. Now suppose in the 1 million, 10 wrong people had joined NUP to cause chaos without the knowledge of NUP. And there was a conflict between the state, the police and the army. And now we are talking of 10 people dead. These are sons and daughters of Ugandans. Let me finish this. Today is a 20th of October. This thing would have happened how long ago? Like say 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Would it be good, comrades, to discuss that 2 weeks ago we lost 10 people? Wouldn't it be prudent for a genuine state to say, do what you can to preempt that, so that there's no death, there's no confusion. And this is what exactly was done. If that was not done, I tell you, today we would now be debating something else.
Major, what is the way forward to freedom of expression and association? Because if we're afraid of gathering 1 million people because we
You see, 1 million alone, even in UK, no police can manage 1 million demonstration. Never. We shouldn't even think about it.
Is there evidence they're going to be 1 million? In fact, if you don't, sorry, just
but they said so.
Quite quick interjection. By the way, you guys with intelligence.
They said so.
No, state actually with intelligence. I'm actually quite genuinely surprised. I would be very surprised actually if, knowing our Uganda population, we these guys and the state know better actually through very organized mainstream intelligence. Forget about Museveni leaning cadre intelligence, but just mainstream intelligence. That's possibly unlikely actually that these guys would have pulled even 100,000 people.
Who is the author of 1 million?
The NUP party.
It is the NUP. Who is the author of 1 million figure?
And you as
now,
government,
for us we know as a state, you cannot manage 1 million people in a proper demonstration. Not even 500,000.
So
not even 500. Are you going to call all the police in Uganda to line up from Entebbe to be sure that they are following the route, to be sure that they have their placards, to be sure that they are talking and expressing? Where do you get police to manage even 500,000? So the only way is to say, please, we can't manage this. In fact, the population of Makere is now about 15 million. Even if you have all the 15 million students of Makere demonstrating even merely against apartheid, as you are saying, the police cannot even allow that because we don't have police to gather to ensure that from the main gate of Makere, they come to one Negea, not picking anybody's genets on the right, not breaking windscreen, that 15 people will follow Kampala Road up to Parliament. You can't. So there is no manpower for 1 million. And the 1 million came from, we now have to check who is the author, whose mouth did it come from.
What is
If you tell government we are going to have 1 million, the logical answer is, ladies and gentlemen, we don't have manpower to manage that.
What is the ideal demonstration number in this country?
I'm not so sure it is provided for in the law because the law provides that
Perhaps
number.
by individual assessment.
Yeah, the law should be there. But I think when it is inside a sitting conference room, it's a bigger number. But the number, I have to check in the law, but the number is discretional at the judgment of the officer presiding.
Thank you so much.
You know, I need to just say something very, very, very quickly. I know we've got to go to break. And, you know, one, I know we're changing tack. The point about the detained ministers, I think we need to talk about it here because that's the only major thing. The only major thing. And
let's start with that immediately
sure,
after the short break. Thank you so much for keeping it the Citizens Chat on Civic Space TV, and the amazing panelists are breaking down the points very vividly and very candidly. We're heading for a very short break, and when we return, we start exactly there.
The Citizens Chatroom happens every Friday at 2 p.m. on Civic Space TV Online on Facebook and YouTube. We invite you to be part of this conversation. Civic Space TV, freedom always.
We'll be back from that short break. It is the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV this Friday, 20th October 2023. Remember, this is made possible by the Center for Constitutional Governance, and we appreciate the support and work done out there. Back to the conversation, my two panelists are still here, the Honorable Joseph Ochieno and the Honorable Retired Major Awich Pollar, discussing the major events of the week and, to be particular, human rights in this country. Honorable Joseph, yes, we left off at a point of contention.
Indeed, I'll be very brief. I was just finding it quite extraordinary, but before I go into the ministers, extraordinary that NRA guys seems to suggest that they don't have capacity to police 1 million people. There's no guarantee that we're going to have 1 million people. And I would be very surprised, actually, if NUP were going to pool 1 million people. They've got capacity to mobilize quite substantially, generally. But to pool 1 million people is not 5 million as suggested, as alleged. But if it is 1 million, there's an important suggestion that concerns me from my brother here, that Ugandans who demonstrate are so thuggish, worse than Luwero bandits, that you cannot go to Entebbe without throwing a stone. As I said, I've got experience of these things, and for future UPC government, I'll make sure it's a fundamental right for the citizens of this country, particularly young Ugandans, to express themselves unfettered. In fact, by the way, demonstrations and marches are actually normal evidence of support, not only for political parties and organizations, you know, but also for causes. And that's why it's very, very important. Now, in this day and age when we're discussing the environment, I would like to see a 1 million march in support of street children in Kampala. I would like to see a 1 million march in support of saving the environment. I want to see a 1 million march in pushing for non-taxing of agricultural products, if imported. I would like to see 1 million march in support for, if you like, reducing the voting age to 16. Is something which I have as a proposal going forward. You know, that's just breaking news. So no, you can't say that we're not going to do it because we don't trust the citizens. Usually, actually, in these demonstrations, Comrade Awich, if you have 100,000 people, the police are supposed to estimate that policing 100,000 people in a demonstration, you possibly need 20 officers, something like that. meaning that you maybe one officer per 50 meters. As I said, if it's demonstration of ordinary citizens, if it's demonstration of ADF guys who've escaped, or these NRA bandits who've been reformed, but you're not sure whether or not.
Police
No, that would be the case. But I just need to make the point. So to suggest that 1 million people you can't, it's almost to make an assumption that this guy's motive to come out is thuggish, which I strongly suggest is not. And I think it would be misleading for this country for us to say that, well, we can't police 1 million people. And if we can't, there's an evidence. Security takes the biggest proportion of our national budget, now only challenged by infrastructure. So what has Museveni been doing? He claimed he was trying to professionalize the army and the security services, including the police. If they're not enough to be able to do this, that means we need to be able to train much more police officers. And then for me, I would call a demonstration to push for budgetary support for more police officers in the street. Now, so that's important. But that said, the question of the ministers. No, those ministers were arrested, and that was actually the last major incident. One-off major incident in a UPC administration, 2 UPC administrations, when political leaders were arrested. Now, those guys were arrested because it's true. They were part of the plot, not only to overthrow the government, but actually they're part of the plot much later, which was associated with the assassination attempt on the president and then prime minister. So this is evidence, and there was evidence. There is no indication that Chagulanyi whisked off the way it was.
Couldn't security have waited for them to leave parliament?
Oh, no. It was
perhaps someone.
It was done in a very deliberate way. That can be a technical and tactical issue. It was easier, and perhaps as a part of a plotting cabinet, and they pulled. You can say in terms of PR, which one was better, but really formal out of that. Number two, one of the ministers suggested, they say the life they led in Luzira was like top-notch 5-star hotel experiences. So notwithstanding the fact that they were taken, in terms of location where they were taken, that, what we're on the basis of what we're discussing, no, these guys' rights were at no time violated. And as I said, they were not whisked for nothing. They were involved in amongst the highest crime that you can commit on any nation state.
Pretty sure Major would not agree with you, but anyway,
he knows on this one. You will agree with me.
We switch gears to yet a different happening in the course of the week.
Yes,
we had a terrible incident, a black spot in the tourism industry of this country, where 2 tourists and their guide were attacked in Queen Elizabeth National Park, killed, their vehicle burnt, allegedly by the ADF. Information we have from security, the Allied Democratic Forces, but also we saw the ISIS claiming the attack. And we've seen a couple of these. We saw them earlier in the attack a school in Kasese. A few weeks ago, we saw still an attack on a trailer still in that part of the country. They keep happening. Maybe to begin with you, Major, why do we keep seeing these ADF incidences in the country?
I think why we keep seeing is that it's normally a tactic by any fighting forces to devise means to show to give visibility, but also to divert attention of people who are pursuing you. We know that there's operation ongoing there. So it could be a diversionary way to say, instead of pursuing us there, we create another front. Always fighting forces tend to have alternative fronts to divide what they call the enemy. Because if 3 brigades or 3 battalions are following you here in Kampala and you create another front in Wakiso, then the enemy will be forced to remove 1 battalion too. So you kind of lessen the pressure. So I think that is what is happening. And then also to show, for PR, as I like putting it, if somebody may be saying you are gone, you want to say, no, I'm not. So I believe this is why these occurrences keep happening.
Honorable Joseph, people killed, not once, not twice, not thrice. Do we smell a failure of the security agencies to protect Ugandans?
It's very sad, very, very sad indeed, particularly the fact that not only does it involve loss of lives regardless, but of course in this case involves tourists with his own associated implications on our economy and on the image of this country. Tourism was just before Idi Amin was pushed in by Anglo-American interests, was threatening to be the #1 foreign exchange earner for our country. So it's a very important thing, particularly in the world where natural resources are dwindling. So tourism as a soft export and net earner for forex is extremely important. It's something that needs to be supported and guided, and all of us should be able to rally around. But of course, perhaps what it means also is raising questions of the capacity of this tired NRA regime to provide the protections for the lives and properties of all the citizens of this country, including residents in this country. You said it has been happening again and again and again and again. Why has it not been the case when more than 56% of our national budget in the last, particularly the early part of the last 37 years, was going to security? Why is it that these things happen, continue to happen, that our security continue not to be sufficiently guaranteed? Why is it that an alleged ADF can continue to do these things? And how many times has Mr. Museveni claimed that ADF is finished? How many times has he said that, well, one of the reasons why you should allow him to continue using and abusing the citizens and the pockets of our national treasury is because he's provided us security that now people can sleep? So really it's an indictment on one hand on the failure of the NRA state to provide the alleged guaranteed security. But that said, it is still very clear that most Ugandans don't know who genuinely this ADF is and who they are and what their real primary grievances are. Maybe I'll want to hear from my good brother here. But beyond that, this thing happened, and I was only the other week passing through one of our national parks, going to Arua and looking through, and then imagine that a tourist, or indeed including anybody going through the spaces, that is where you target people to kill. It's really a very bad taste. You rather it's some other particular corner, but rather not, in such kind of space. And as I understand it, I'm told these are couples who were out here for honeymoon. It's a crude thing. So my heart really goes to their families and the families of all other Ugandan people.
What does this mean for the tourism industry?
Obviously, as I said, it's a major misfortune, and it's something that I think as Ugandans we need to rally around, that whatever, and regardless of our differences with this incompetent NRA state, we should be able to rally around and make sure that the tourism as an industry and our hospitality is not lost, and the fact that the rights to have foreigners to come and safely enjoy the good weather and the goodness of Ugandan people is not guaranteed. Comrade Awich, for the record, I am fundamentally opposed to your NRA regime. I fundamentally decampaigned it over the years, and I did so at every opportune moment. I still continue to do so, that Mr. Museveni should retire so that we rebuild a post-Museveni Uganda. But all through my time, whenever I meet a non-Ugandan, this is actually breaking news, whenever I meet a non-Ugandan, particularly, non-Ugandan, I have always said this, that notwithstanding anything and everything else in Uganda, one thing that we must give ourselves credit to is that Ugandans, sometimes to our major disadvantage, Ugandans will rarely be rude to a foreigner. So whether you're a Kenyan, Sudanese, whatever, Ugandans, in most cases, relative to other countries that have been around the world, both on the continent and outside Africa, Uganda will be a very friendly place once Ugandans know that you're not a Ugandan citizen. We will seek to extend our hands of friendship and protection and support. And worse, of course, in better, particularly for people who've got advantage of identity, meaning people who don't look like us, meaning white. Even if there's a white Ugandan citizen or an Asian Ugandan citizen who has not known anything beyond Uganda, so long as you are the other, Ugandans very uniquely will tend to protect, love, and sometimes, in many cases, favor you. So, then I said at the peak of this NRA dictatorship banditry, including when they were torching northern Uganda, I will tell them that Uganda is very insecure. Many Ugandans are escaping, but for you as a foreigner to go to Uganda, unless you're caught up, it's unlikely that whether the Ugandan state or anybody else in Uganda would seek to target you. That really still remains my message and my hope. And I hope, with emphasis, that that is a direction that we should not lose. We should continue with our friendship. I have concerns when sometimes some foreigners come here and exploit our goodwill, and sometimes our state uses some dubious foreigners to exploit our hospitality and goodness. But in principle, no, visitors and visitors. And I may say so, particularly something very small for younger viewers, including you, you handsome young presenter. One of the best traditions in this country, usually from our times, is changing now radically, and I think Comrade Awich will agree, is again this hospitality thing. Traditionally, when we're growing up, and we're a boy from the neighboring village, or a girl from the neighboring village, whenever you go to the next village, particularly to the elders, you go for protection. They'll protect you. And if you came to my village, simply because you're a stranger, it does not matter whether they know where you're coming from. My dad is more likely to give you his normal share where or you sit down there. You'll get away with quite a lot simply because you're a guest. And we used to argue, meaning to debate as youngsters and in fact as students, that for us, the boys, men, and which would have a disadvantage, that if a young, handsome Muliisa, arrives in Kampala, or rather in Nagongera or in Dokolo, the girls will come for you because you're exotic, because you're new, and there's always a kind of competition. So that is also our traditions, that we welcome and protect guests rather than to target them. So whatever the issues, I know terrorists that's a different subject I'm familiar with, will sometimes want to convey messages in different other ways. But I think to target people who are not associated with our internal grievances is that.
Major, if I come to you, we had a statement from the government of the United Kingdom, but also the government of France, cautioning their citizens against visiting the national park. But also we had earlier cautions of bomb scares in the country, still from the same governments. Do we have a reason to be scared?
A reason to be scared. Let me answer that. Do we have a reason to be scared?
Oh, concerned.
I want to answer, to comment on what my colleague said.
Please.
Okay. Now, first I'd like to say the economic effect. I share the sentiments he has said. The economic effect is bad. I often follow the route Gulu-Kampala road. And when you start from Mijera, Mijera is one of the urban areas in Nakasongola district, where there are stopping centers for refreshment. You will see all classes of tourists. Classes, I mean, of course, the first class are those who hire planes. There's an airstrip in what you call Kabalega National Park. So the first class go there by air. But the other second class are those who hire special cars, like Land Cruisers. You get them in Mijera. You get in Kabalega Dina. The third class are those who hire tourist vans. And I think these are the type who were killed. They hire tourist vans. They are there at reasonable fees. They go. Then the other class are those who go in buses. A group coming from UK or anywhere in a bus of a bus can. The number of buses
Maybe 60, maybe
60.
40.
So you can hardly see. You see everywhere. I mean, every time this class is going. Now, this is a threat if they feel insecure. And of course, a clear indication of insecurity is that you will be shot. Especially with the one which borders Congo. This other one doesn't have direct contact with Congo because it is shielded or protected by Lake Albert. So it directly does not go to Congo, but it is safer this way. But the other one, so the risk is very big, and yet the turnover was so much. I had the opportunity to be in this one itself, in a Paralodge, for 3 nights. You could really see the turnover of guests. This is a vibrant, showing the vibrancy of the economy, the vibrancy of peace. So it is really good. It is bad to have it turn around. You know, people start waking up by 5. I did wake up twice. Waking up at 5 because it is believed that at 5 is where you get the cats. That is the lion, the leopard moving. So you find this all over the park. The vans are moving, until around 8 there. So it is really busy and working. So this one is a threat for that. If it is, now that it has occurred, I just hope it will be taken as an isolated event and it will go. But it will have a bad effect on our tourism. We pray that our colleagues out there know that the state is taking all it does to make sure that that is an isolated incident. Now, the other comment I wanted to make was my colleague, his choice of words is not convincing. Choice of words is diction. For example, he says the tired NRM.
The Luwero bandits.
NRM is not tired. NRM is one of the organizations,
The most energetic, yeah?
which has kept on with the highest rotation of leadership. If you call all the ministers who have been there, they're in hundreds, meaning that we change people of position of authority every time. A policy was started in the army. For example, the army is a state institution, but I can dare say this because it is an example to others, is that we first started what was called reduction in force around 92. Big number of soldiers were sent home. But now we have a routine. You have seen every year generals retiring, officers retiring, and you have seen every year adverts for new recruits. So it is that kind of the system that is used as the army is the way we have. We already have on our flag bearers in the political party that we have a turnover of attrition of about 80% of our flag bearers don't come back. And this is a change, energizing, because our struggle for flag in the party is the same as election in the national party. Everybody votes. If you went to a constituency, a campaign for getting a flag for NRM is like a final election. So, comrade, we have a very rigorous turnover in our leadership. So NRM is not tired.
They will argue that because you do not change the driver, it doesn't matter whether you change the conductors and the turnmen.
Yes.
Beginning to dawn
yes,
on
you
the wheels.
see, we don't change the driver because we test his competency again every 5 years. And apart from COVID, we all go to Nambole for what we call national conference, which is the ultimate body. It's a big thing. And we decide in Nambole, is this driver still competent? So the checks and balances of every 5 years still test our driver. And he has passed the test every 5 years. So, Congressman, NRM is not tired. It re-energizes every time. And it tests the driver every 5 years in Nambole. Your question, do you have a reason to be scared of?
ADF threats, they are killing people. Every month we have an issue.
Oh yes, you cited the incidences.
Yes, the tourists were killed. The
Of course, you get scared with insecurity. But whether, again, back to the choice of words, whether scare is a good word, but I think we get concerned. And that is why, as a state, as a government, we come out with institutional measures to handle. In other words, we don't let go and ignore what happens. So we can take care. But let me finally say about the aspect of Ugandans. I like his vision that much as we have political difference, he advocates for Uganda as a country and Uganda as a people. That is what we call patriotism. So you're patriotic, then why don't you join NRM? One of our core principles is patriotism. So it is true that in a friendliness, we have been leading in the world in refugees particularly, until recently when Turkey overtook us, because Turkey got lots of refugees from Syria, and for some reason they were so friendly. But there's a test. High Commissioner, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has a test to test the refugee friendliness, and Uganda is very high. It has been leading in the world until recently Turkey took over. And that is what we do to all foreigners. So my friend, to think that way is patriotic, and patriotism is one of our core principles. It should join NRM.
Thank you so much. What do you have to respond to that?
This-
They are very energetic.
This
and
dreamer here, this dreamer, they're dreaming. How do you join a sinking organization? How do you join an organization with a tired?
says
a tired.
80% of their flag bearers do not come back.
A tired driver sleeping on the wheels. That's very,
check a driver every 5 years.
Dangerous, very dangerous. No, Mr. Museveni is tired and NRA is tired. But of course, also when you talk about these things, it's not about people and personnel. It's much more important, like on a serious note, it's about policies and programs. The NRA, after 38 years, they failed on security. So the security that they sang about for a very long time, the incidents we're discussing, is a manifestation of their failure. And it's a gross failure. And actually, if they had a tested opposition in place, they would be rigorously answering more questions than this, including where monies are going. And normally, actually, in the course of events like this is when leaders of parliamentary committees and sensible opposition leaders should be subjecting the governing authorities to critical questions to account for the monies used. The conversations about police budgeting, and just as I was trying to talk about in the demonstrations, whether or not the relevant security agencies are just eating our money and then buying dubious malls, but instead of actually making sure that intelligence services and agencies are doing their jobs, whether or not maybe the wrong officers in place. Remember when Museveni got the attack in Somalia, said that funny people were sending in friends and family. This is the time to have those kind of conversations. So the tiredness of NRA is substantially manifest, but by those failures. Remember, we had the Kasese student failures, and we were here, and I was a very sad, annoyed man by the very apparent failure of NRA security at the border, to protect our citizens, indeed these young students, and typical Uganda sometimes with us. Well, we're very generous to foreigners. Sometimes we forget about our own. People died, and all of a sudden, as you said, every other month these things happen. It hits the headline, and by the following week, it's a gone story. But also fatigue about political organizations. When you look at 40 years, you test them. What has happened about education? We are now on education index. We're the worst in East Africa. When you look at health facilities, the other day, Comrade Awich, early in the week, I went to. I had reason to go to Mulago, and that's a shocking shambles. And then after that, I had a reason to meet somebody who basically went for medical tests, general tests, and this person had to pay 320,000 Uganda shillings for tests, and then 128,000 Uganda shillings for medicine. They couldn't go for many. So if you add that together, and then you wonder. That is somebody's average wage per month, and in fact, our health services has been sold and privatized. A friend of mine said the other day, 4 days ago actually, Comrade Awich, a very eminent citizen of this country, went to Toro Hospital, and he told me on phone that, Joseph, I went to Toro Hospital because the person eventually died. I went to Toro Hospital. So hospitals in Uganda are no longer places to go for people to go and save lives, but or rather, and then to treat diseases, but the places for people to go and catch diseases. So you go there basically to see somebody, or maybe to look after somebody. You come back with diseases. So that's the fatigue: health, fatigue, education, fatigue, transport, fatigue, infrastructure. Fatigue, tourism away from this, just basically infrastructure, the hotels that we built, the infrastructure that we built, that's what we're talking about. Agriculture, how many people are dying hungry? You know what? What they call poverty interdimensional report that came the other day. Sarah was talking about on this program. I looked through the figures the other day, and Bukedi, my Bukedi, 78%. So Bukedi is now the poorest sub-region in this country. So if you can imagine, Bukedi now surpasses Karamoja and surpasses Acholi. Not that Acholi and Karamoja are doing well, but basically means things are happening terribly wrong in Bukedi. We need to be looking at it. So these are the things to talk about. A continuation of a regime in power to say that they're changing leaders when in NRA nobody can challenge Mr. Museveni. Basically tried and said, stop, you should stop down there and wait because it's jumping the queue. Is no suggestion that, well, there's any democracy. So your organization is very, very tired in the face of Uganda. The only problem is that you use rigging and threats and intimidation, and where people should democratically go ahead and demonstrate to show a change, just to say this, to show a change, you claim that no, you don't have the police to allow them to demonstrate and express their dissatisfaction with your regime.
As Honorable stresses the fatigue in the different circles of the NRM government, I want us to talk the tourism industry and specifically conservation of these tourism sites, including the forests, the lakes, the water bodies, the rivers. Over the years, we've seen forests being cut down. We've seen Mabira Forest going down by the day. We've seen the contention on Budongo Forest, on whether it should be cut down for sugarcane and so on. Is the NRM government doing enough to protect tourism for the future, because you claim to be securing the future?
Yeah, NRM is doing enough to protect tourism, but the way you have said it, I think there are two things there. Environment and tourism seems to stand separately. But I can comment that environment, a lot is being done. You can start from legislations, the many laws that have been passed to protect it, the many institutions that have been created, National Environment Authority, Forest Authority, and all that. And environment police, there's a separate police for environment. And you have seen their pickups moving, environment police. They're expected to enforce those laws and enforce those regulations and support those institutions. Now, particular institutions like the forest, we have really put in a lot to guard it. So, including inspection of timbers cut. Did you know that when you cut timbers, there's not only provided a manner of cutting, for example, like the net. Like the net, you said you are not supposed to use this size of net to catch fish. There's also machines which are prohibited in cutting those trees because they finish the trees.
But you see, Honorable, the Ministry of Environment and National Forestry Authority issue permits for people to cut.
That is why they're supposed to be issued in consonance with the agreed legal position. That is why there's inspectors to see whether you carrying this timber, you are carrying it in consonance with the law. That is why the inspectors are there to check the issue. Are this timber the one issued? Because it is not true that timbers are not supposed to be cut. They're supposed to be cut, but are cut according to the laws. And you know that laws are made with clear advice of professionals. Before they become law, they pass through scrutiny of professionals in that area. So there is a way that should be done. So that is it. But in the area of protection of the national park, a lot has been done to preserve it. You know that now you can't even have a crested crane in your compound. The laws prohibit that. There's wild animals or wild plants are supposed to be where they're supposed to be. Poaching has been reduced. In the past, there was serious poaching, to the extent that poachers were almost armed like rebels. They have been handled. There have been a lot of investment by World Bank in creating roads. If you go to these parks, the roads are created inside the park, but even accessibility. You could know that one of the best roads is from Masinde to River Nile, crossing from Para. That bridge is better than a bridge in Jinja. So, and again, there is a police for national park. Even in this parade, the parade where you have the army, the police, the prisons, there is a parade guard always mounted by. So a lot of effort is being put in way of legal system, institutions, the enforcement system, the roads made there too, lots of prohibition and protection. So a lot is being done to protect.
Then, as you conclude, what fails us as Barroso? Give us your parting shots for the show.
What fails us? Okay. What fails us is that normally when you legislate and put in, it's a dynamic society. You have an anticipated events. For example, you don't expect that you will have rebels. You don't expect poachers. So things don't work the way you plan. And that's why you need to put safeguards. So those are the challenges. But also to some extent, we have had challenges of finance. And that's why I'm telling you, sometimes you go to World Bank and all that for that kind of thing. So those are the financial and other anticipated. Those are what fails us. But by far, we have gone, it is working. Parks have gone and advanced and investment. Even if you go to a national park now, I've been there, you'd think you're in a national park in South Africa. Now, my parting shot is that for today's topic of human rights and insecurities, that I like to assure Ugandans that human rights is a continuous struggle. And violations also get complicated by the development of society. For example, technology. Did you know that what would not be a violation 10 years ago, today would be a violation? Cyber and all that. So I just like to assure Ugandans that the commitment for the government is there, but that we would not have a perfect situations without violations. I repeat that what is important is, if you anticipate violations, have you put measures in place to address it should they occur, should violations occur? I can assure you those measures are in place. So Ugandans should relax because measures isn't there, but it's a struggle. Even in Sweden, violations are there.
Thank you so much, Honorable Joseph. A brief response to that, but also your concluding remarks.
I'm not sure that I have anything to say about my good friend who has got to do his job and to defend NRAs. It's defending the indefensible. NRA's human rights record over the last 38 years are atrocious. If you put in relative terms, they're worse than Idi Amin's, and as I said, with evidence. But that said, the issue is not about them. The issue is where we are at the moment. I just ask these guys to have some sense of humility, take responsibility, accept particularly that younger guys like yourselves need to have a nation in which you have a right to freely express yourselves, rights to and freedoms to demonstrate, but also that you have those rights that include the right to access to opportunities so that your jobs are not tied to whom you know, your education opportunities are not tied to your inability to afford. UPC used to pay, make sure that orphans and had free education. In Uganda these days is neither here nor there, let alone the fact that Museveni would not have gone to school if it was a system of these days. So when you talk about human rights, you can go into then and talk about economic rights, environmental rights, and things like that. But since the concluding thing, no, it's extremely important. I would say that no, it is excess work in progress. I'm not quite sure whether it's going to fundamentally change under NRA because I don't think they have the will to be able to do so. And the tired driver, Mr. Museveni, absolutely the job he has at the moment is about protecting his space and making sure that he doesn't stumble at all, rather than anything to build anything for the future. After all, his future is for his Bazukulu, his grandchildren, like he told Jeff Koinange on of KTN in Kenya. On the question of the terror attack, we reject terror. In UPC, we reject terror. We faced NRA terror. It was terrible both for us as a party and as a government and as a peoples, and the country has almost not recovered from it. We don't believe that conflicts should be resolved by violent means, and it should be political. But we want to see an NRA that is willing and capable to have humility, sense of humility, to see an opposition both armed and unarmed, as the citizens of this country, and where you ask questions, what really are the big issues. So really, if you can't allow people the rights, not freedom, the rights basically to go in front of parliament and wave a picture of a Mabati, and when you have thieves, there's 23 of them in your cabinet, what do you expect? People will get angry, and maybe they'll begin to consider extreme measures. The extreme measures are those that normally lead to insecurity, lead to criminal activities, and of course, in the ultimate, it normally leads to terrorism. I hope at some stage these matters end, and whatever happens, that we're able to rally around ourselves and build a Uganda in which there's a post-Museveni, national truth and reconciliation, so that we give a future of this continent, our country, the manner in which UPC at the foundation in 1962 wanted to give for our country, and to do so for God and my country.
Thank you so much, the Honorable Joseph Ochieno. Can I call you UPC President in the making now?
God willing.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, retired Major Awich, Pollar, Director, External Affairs, the NRM. Thank you for joining us. And to you, the viewer out there, thank you so much for being with us all this time. I'm Phillip, Muliisa, your host today, and special thanks to the Center for Constitutional Governance for making this possible. Special thanks to the crew, the team behind cameras, Pollar and Rashid. Thank you for the job well done. And from us, we say, see you next time.